Sounds good. Thank you, Jasmine. Filevine, of course, signed me out right when I was trying to pull up something. So I am just getting all signed in here. And then we were going to kind of jump in. Today, I had originally planned to cover what's called batch operations, which is a pretty cool feature that is built into FVDA that really kind of highlights how you can do kind of mass doc gens and some other options. But our demo environment is not cooperating. So we are going to pivot and we are also going to show you guys how you can make edits, save to specific folders, and generate documents. And as well of that, like we're just gonna maybe use the settlement calculator as a good jumping off point, just because I see some familiar names in the chat, lots of PI firms in here. So it might feel a little familiar for you guys to take a look at that. So let me just see if Filevine has decided to let me sign in, because then we can jump in and get started with our settlement calculator here. So let's see. Jasmine, are you having a hard time logging into the sandbox by chance, or is it maybe just a me problem?
Let me double check. That's under the Filevine clients now. And for those of you that have FVDA, you know that really the only time you're ever going to have to come into Outlaw is to update templates, create new templates, things like that. So that's what we're getting logged into. But if you all ever have or need, okay, looks like I'm in the fv.getoutlaw.com. Do you want me to share my screen?
No, sorry, just our main like Vine Skills Filevine sandbox. I think it's finally loading for me. Holy moly, that was painful. Okay.
It's taking forever to load too.
All right. I'm just trying to find a good test case. It looks like some things have gotten moved around in here. Let's see if this one is filled out. All right, we found one. This is great. So we'll go ahead and use this one. I'm going to share. So like I was saying today, we can go and generate a settlement calculator template, and I can show you guys some ins and outs, how you can actually edit the template within FVDA without having to download it as a Word doc, then resave it as a PDF, then upload it to Filevine. That's very cumbersome, right? So Filevine has released the capability where you can just directly save into Filevine. They have also released the ability to map in to certain folders when you're generating the .vine. A .vine file is what we're going to generate here. You'll notice it says .vine right here. Afterwards, it's not a Word doc, it's not a PDF, it's its own thing. It's a Filevine document, and that can actually be mapped to a specific folder. If you're an OG FVDA or Outlaw person, you'll know that previously we didn't have this capability. So anytime you generated a document, it would just go into this main, I would guess you would call it kind of the parent folder of documents, right? It didn't go into any of your subfolders here. So we can actually take a look at that. I can show you guys how to set that up on the back end, because we do set that up through the customs editor. So let's go ahead and jump back there. We're going to jump into the back end of the customs editor or the advanced access tool here. Now, you might not have all these options if you're looking at the back end, but the main one that we're going to be accessing today is the customs editor. So we'll want to jump in. This might look a little different for you guys, where you actually have to select a drop down for the team. We have a lot of different teams that we're a part of, so that might be the reason why you're seeing this. Otherwise, you would be able to jump into the specific project template where your FVDA template is connected to. As a reminder, you can only connect one FVDA template to one project template. So we would just want to jump into one of them. Let's see if this is ours.
And as an
We
additional
can
reminder, when you're connecting your documents in FVDA, you're connecting them to a specific section within a template. So you want to make sure that you're adding the button into the section. You can always change where you generate a document from, but you would have to do this step over again in that other section as well.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Jasmine. So we can come in here, and if we haven't added in a widget before, which is how you actually push the button to generate the document, you can come in here to your widgets, and then you're going to be looking for the one that says Outlaw template. Um, this one, it's fine. This is our demo environment. We don't have this set up, I guess, for whatever reason. So we'll see what we are going to run into there. But basically, you would be able to either choose in the project which template you're going to generate. So that means that you're going to have a drop down of different templates, and all your templates for that specific section, like we were in the settlement section before, you can generate those. Otherwise, you can say choose now, and then you can choose a specific template that can only be generated from that widget. So it's kind of the option of just having a multi-select dropdown or locking it down so that you only have one option. And then from here, obviously, you would just give it a name. But the main part that we're here for today is the auto move folder. So this will auto move it will auto move the .vine, which is the document that we are going to generate. And it will then essentially push it into a specific folder. So in this case, if we wanted to connect it and we're generating our settlement calculator or our settlement sheet, we probably want this to live in our settlement folder. So we can come in here and we can map it there. Previously, this didn't exist. You might be thinking, oh, I've been able to do this for, uploads or docgens, different things like that. FVDA is now getting that capability. So you can actually go back in now if you've previously had FVDA, and you can remap your specific documents to those folders just to keep everything a little bit more nice and tidy. So that would be it. You would just select the folder and then hit create. And that would be it. So I will jump back now just into our project that we were accessing before. And let me just verify here that we have our org set up. Okay, perfect. It was making me nervous before when it was saying we didn't have an API key connected, but we sure do. So that is always good. But you can see here we are now in our settlement section. If you haven't seen this settlement section before, this is our static version of the settlement section, which works really nicely and pairs really nicely with Domo. So if you see that in your future and you're like, oh, I'd really like to maybe upgrade my settlement section, maybe it was previously a collection section, this is a great jumping off point. You can actually come in here and select how many settlements you have. And then each one of those settlements has a nice breakdown of all the settlement information. This plays really nicely with the settlement calculator, specifically if you're PI. I've also built out some additional ones for like workers' comp related cases or social security, right? And we just change this type here. So instead of having, liability or something like that, we can say benefit, we can say reward, we can even add other drop downs in here if you're doing med pay or something like that. So it makes this a really powerful tool, and it makes it really nice for the settlement calculator because we can take all this great information that we have here and build it into the calculator in a way that it's really easy to digest for the client versus just a comparison between the negotiation section. You really just have this amount field. You're not getting any of that granular data. So when you put this onto the settlement sheet, obviously our data is only as good as what we put into Filevine. And so therefore, if we're not putting a lot of data into Filevine, we're not going to get that same level of data that we might like to see in our settlement calculator. Awesome. So we can come into here. We'll notice that we can also fill out co-counsel fees. This is toggled on yes, but we didn't fill out anything. We can keep this as no if we want. And then all of this other information is essentially just pulling and totaling up here at the top. I'm just taking the time to walk through and explain because in our next step, we're actually going to be generating it. And I just want you guys to understand where this is all pulling in from and how this is all happening. Awesome. So it looks like there's technically only one settlement filled out, so I'm just going to update that for us. And then we're going to be able to come down here and generate a template. These are obviously some of our test templates that we have. They have very long names. You don't have to keep that name, right? So if you wanted to call this, settlement sheet, and then you could even add the client's name up here. That works too. If you have, and it helps to spell raccoon correctly. If you guys have a specific naming convention that you like to use, you can also, basically input that option here. But then next, we would just need to come in here and generate. And it might take this a moment, just as it starts to generate. It's going to mail merge all those great things.
If you
And
all are ever having like an error message or something like that when you try to generate a document, it's either A, because you haven't logged into Outlaw, so you'll need to do that, or B, if you're like, I've never even created a password in Outlaw, I don't know what that is, you need to be added into Outlaw itself in order to even generate the documents from Filevine. So again, you really don't ever have to go into Outlaw to generate these or anything like that, but you do have to be at least added in and create a password in order for you to be able to generate these documents inside of Filevine. So as you all think about folks moving in and out of your office, hiring new folks, when you add them into Filevine, you should also be adding them into Outlaw. That's the case if you have just the settlement calculator in FVDA, or if you're using FVDA for other documents as well.
perfect. Yeah, that is great. And it is going to make me sign in. Um, so just to show you guys over here, it is just prompting me to log in. So I just have to make sure that I am signing in and that I have my information over here in the team in order to be able to access that. So what you don't want to happen is you can see up here, I'm signed in as myself. If for some reason I was maybe signed in as like maybe an intake specialist account or something like that, where it's a generic email, and then I'm trying to log in here with my, Jordan specific email, there's going to be a mismatch and it's not going to let you log in. So you just need to make sure when you are signed in to Filevine, you're using the same email that you would also be using back here in Outlaw. Typically, the way that works is whenever you purchase Outlaw, it is just they basically give you the same amount of user licenses that you have in Filevine. So you don't have to worry about, did I only purchase this many? Typically, your AE just advances that through. So if you have 15 users in Filevine, you would have 15 licenses in FVDA that you can add. At any time, if you want, you can always purchase more, but you really shouldn't need to. And then on that note too of signing in, everybody does need to make sure they actually set up their account. If we invited somebody else in here, I'm going to grab Jasmine's email. And actually, Jasmine, you've set yours up before, so I might just add like a plus in there so it's slightly different. But if I went to go and invite Jasmine here, no, it's not Jasmine's email. If we went to go add this email in, and we just hit add member, it'll say invited next to her name, and that means that she hasn't fully set up her account yet. She's just been invited. That means that an email has gone out to her. But in order for her to fully generate documents, she needs to finish setting up her account, and then it'll have, her name over here, and it will no longer say invited. So that is definitely one of the troubleshooting items that we run into, especially when you're a new firm, maybe you're launching, we're trying to get all your users in. We need to make sure that not only do we invite them, but they actually go and set up their account. And that's something that the user has to physically do. We unfortunately don't have any like admin permissions that we can just like set up people's accounts.
And on the vein of adding users into Outlaw, you'll notice that there are roles and observer options. You will want to make sure that you change those. There's a brief description under each that tells you exactly kind of what that permission level is going to give that individual. Viewers are really only going to be able to see the template. They can't really do much else. That's probably not the most helpful role to have somebody in, because it requires then an admin or something like that to go in and make any changes or to generate or anything like that. So at least an editor for both the team role, and then the access is going to kind of be the Filevine side of things. There is one more option under the access than there is for the team role, and that's proposer, which essentially is going to be able to propose changes. They're not going to be able to actually make changes. So again, if you have some checks and balances and you don't want folks to be able to make changes, but really to just propose them, proposer is great. If you don't want to have to go through that extra step of having to approve all of those changes, and you just want people to be able to generate and edit, you would want to change that access to probably editor as well.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great point, Jasmine. And just to also, since we're kind of in here, they also added this new option, which is edit without redlining by default. Once we generate this settlement calculator, this might make a little bit more sense, specifically if you're a new user to the interface of Outlaw. Just because previously, when you clicked into a paragraph to edit it, by default, it was set up to have redline checked on. Redline means that you can propose changes, and it won't actually make them. It'll essentially propose them. It'll say, hey, Jordan, like deleted half this paragraph and then retyped it with this, but it won't actually delete anything. And then you can pass it on to your team or have other people review if you want to accept those redline changes or remove them and then basically roll it back to how the paragraph was. So previously, when you clicked into a paragraph, it was automatically on. And I feel like I've been personally objectified by redlining because a lot of times you forget to turn it off and then you type all this stuff up and you're like, oh crap, this was under redlining instead of I just wanted to make these edits really quickly. So you can actually now come in here and based on the user, you can toggle that off. This is something that users can set up for themselves. It doesn't need to be an org admin thing. They would just need to, obviously, when they log in and set up their account, they can toggle this off. So if you know you're somebody that's never going to be redlining, you're like, I am here to edit and get things done, you can just go ahead and toggle this on and you won't ever have to deal with redlining. If you ever need to in the future, you need to redline, you can just click into that paragraph and then check the box for redline and toggle it on. That option will still be available to you, but you don't have to have it set to default. And then Marin has a question. Are you talking about editing the template or editing a specific doc in the project? I am talking about editing a specific doc in the project for this specific one. So let's go ahead and jump into that so you guys can see what that would look like. And just to kind of talk about that really quickly, since we're on that option, when I click in to edit a paragraph like we have here, you can see that redline is checked on. So then if I came in here and I started typing something, you can see that this is green highlighted instead of just regular text. That means that I am proposing to add new text. Versus if I came in here, let's hit cancel. If I came in here and I wanted to say, let's delete this title, I just hit a backspace, it redlined it saying I'm trying to delete this. So this would be on the specific document itself, not the template. So just wanted to illustrate that for you guys, what that would look like. But now we have actually generated this document. So we hit generate over here. This went through, this merged everything together. And now we have our settlement calculator document, which we can go through and we can manipulate, right? So we have a couple different options. This is one of our Vine Skills best practices template. And it's kind of two templates in one. It is a replacement for the previous yield section. Some of you guys might still have that. I don't know if we even have that in this template. But it was the previous answer for Filevine to be able to have attorneys essentially play around with your fees and pull in your expenses and meds. The only thing it didn't do was pull in liens. And by pull in, I mean you did have to manually enter that data, but you could then get an idea of how much the client would get when they settled and your fees would be. So this version is the latest and greatest. I think this was released by Filevine in beta almost a year ago now. And now it's been really honed in, and Filevine's making a lot of great efforts to make changes and updates to it as well. But one of the main takeaways is that we can now have a couple of embedded options in here. So like I selected here, we can now do a calculating settlement, very much like a projected settlement, right? Where attorneys can come in here, they can say, hey, I think I want to maybe demand $100,000 or whatever it may be. It's going to automatically calculate your fees for you. If you're like, hey, this actually went to litigation, I'm going to charge 40%. What would that look like? You can see that this is dynamically changing. This is formula based. So it's just taking these data points and combining them. And what makes it really nice is that, like I was saying before, that old section that Filevine had, you could enter your expenses and you could enter your meds, you couldn't enter your liens, but you also had to enter them manually, and that takes time. So instead of entering them manually, we can just come over here and we can pull in information if we have any. There we go. So we didn't have any expenses filled out over here, so that's why it said we didn't have any. If we click in over here, add item, it's a good indicator we didn't fill this out. So again, Filevine's only as good as the data that we put into it. So that would be something before I'm ready to generate this settlement calculator. I should probably make sure that I have my expenses filled out, just so that I can pull them in. But you do see that we have meds selected here. So we do have some information input there, and we can either select all of the meds or we can pick and choose meds that we want to include, right? So that is available to us. You can also sort this, alphabetically if you want, or you can sort by the different balances if you would like. So you do have capabilities to kind of arrange your data in certain ways there. I'm just going to hit update here. And then you can see that this is totaling. So now that we have this totaling, we can also reference this over on our document itself. And then we would also just rinse and repeat for liens. Good, we have a lien. That is perfect. We have this coming in. We can also customize what we're pulling in here. This is typically what most people want to see on a final settlement sheet, but I've also seen people pull in the reduction field to sit in between original balance and final balance. Same for meds, and same, maybe you don't want lien type included. You can also customize that to not pull that in. So we can really customize it based on any of the fields that you might have in your expenses, meds, or liens section, right? So anything that lives in this section as far as a field, we would be able to pull it into a table, with the only caveat being we can't pull in documents. That's not something we can pull in just because they are its own document. You can't really embed that into a table.
You do have a cap of 6 columns. For those of you that haven't used Outlaw before, or maybe are just starting out, you can obviously pull in from multiple collection sections at any given time. These tables, again, do have a limitation of 6 columns, but they allow you to have a running total and things like that. You could also pull these into like sentences if you need to, maybe not in a settlement statement, but in another instance. And the page that you're seeing now, if you're like, I've literally never seen a page that looks like this, all the data is just in a document already. This is an overview. This is something that does need to be built out with the template inside of Outlaw in order for you to be able to see it here in Filevine. But it is a really great way for you to be able to fill out the data that you need for your document ahead of time to make sure that either A, you don't miss any data points that need to be kind of filled out or manually selected by your team. And then B, again, you're able to use or pull the data from this overview into the document without having to like maybe include the entire table in your actual document. So if you're like, we just need our meds total pulled in, the overview is a great place to kind of have it generate so that you can just include that data in your document.
Yeah, that's a great point too, Jasmine. I really love kind of overbuilding the overview, if you will, because I want to see a snapshot of all the information I need to have in my document. And this becomes specifically important when you're dealing with a lot of conditionalities. So in the background of this template, just to kind of show you, just to build out the conditionalities between this calculating settlement and already settled, we have a lot of fields. So if we come into here, and I think this is the one we're working on, You can see all of these that are like kind of yellow, orange highlights. These are all conditional values, which means these paragraphs are only going to show up at certain times, despite I have a lot of them. So you can see a quick scroll through. This is a lot of work in the back end, and I'm filtering off of a couple different things, right? I'm filtering off of how many settlements I have, if I'm itemizing this settlement, also if I'm calculating a settlement. So I need a good place to house all that information to make sure before I get to the document and I take one look at it and say, nothing is there, nothing has generated. Or my favorite is like, oh, this document's not working. And it's like, it is working. It's working really well. You just don't have the conditionalities toggled on. So it looks like nothing is showing up. But that's a really great use case for the overview.
I
And
also,
we can see, Mhm.
sorry, I was just going to say, I also really like the overview for long documents because you can see on the overview there's a blue arrow for expenses. That's an indicator in your Outlaw documents that that data needs to be filled out. So when you don't have an overview and you just have a document, it's probably really easy to miss those blue arrows if you're scrolling through 30 pages worth of data that maybe needs to have somebody's eye on it. So you can use it in that scenario as well.
No, that's great. Yeah. And there's also some features where if you wanted to, when you're in the overview like this and you say, hey, this settlement, this expenses section, maybe it relates back over here, and you can actually come in and you can link these sections. And when you link sections to the overview, it shows you a little preview of what that section is going to look like in your document. This one isn't a good example because it's the exact same table, so it's going to show the exact same information. But maybe if this expenses was, or better yet, let's see, this settlement was maybe tied to this sign off here, right? Because we want to put in our firm name and just anything about the fees and cost. It would show me a little preview just right underneath how many settlements there are. And it would say, hey, here's that section that you're referencing. It's really great in long contracts, like Jasmine was saying, so that you can reference this data. I can leave that linked and we can always generate another test too to show you guys what that would look like, because previously this wasn't linked. So when I'm looking at my document here, we're not going to see that change because it's, retroactive. So, okay, dokie. So yeah, once we have all this filled in, we want to proceed over to our document, which where we can see here, this is going to say settlement calculator because we are basically calculating a settlement. We are playing around, we are projecting, nothing has finally settled here. But you can get an overview of how much your client might take home. Now, you might get to this step and you said, I really promised my client that they would take home, $60,000. So you can experiment with maybe reducing your fee. And you can see as soon as I reduce the fee to 35, it's calculating out your fees here, and then it's putting some more money in the client's pocket there. So it's really nice to have that option to play around with the fees. You can even come up here, you can play around with the projected settlement, see what that would be, just so, as an attorney or even a paralegal that's drafting these, you can get a really good idea of how this case might turn out and might settle if everything goes your guys' way.
And as you
So.
can see, you didn't have to go back to the overview to redo that. You can do it directly from the document. There's like a tiny little dotted line under the fields that Jordan was just editing. That's an indicator that like those are ones that are being filled in. They're not standard text or data that's in there. They're flexible. I don't know the right
Mhm.
word for that, but
Yeah, like
you can,
dynamic.
yeah, hover and click directly from the document.
Yeah, that's a great point. You can also see here, as I'm hovering over this paragraph, I have the option to make comments. So instead of maybe commenting directly on the document, and maybe I'm a paralegal drafting this and I'm like, I want my attorney to review this. I can leave a comment, and you can see as soon as I leave a comment, this is going to be blue, and you can see when it was made. You can also come in here and edit your comment. So that is pretty nice feature because then you don't have to worry about, um, making your document like less pretty or clogging it up with a bunch of extra words that really just need to maybe be a comment. So it's very similar to, how you would use a Google Doc. You can come in here and you can collaborate on things. You can comment back and forth. I can add additional comments if I want. If Jasmine was in here, she can comment back to me and it would, say that Jasmine is commenting there. So that's all the options that you have. And then you do have options, when you're ready to resolve, you can either resolve this thread, right? You'll notice that this is grayed out. And when I click into it, I can still see the comment history. Or otherwise, you can also come in here and clear this out. And then when I click in, there's no evidence of those comments. So it's really up to you how you want to handle those, but that is a nice tool. Same thing, and we kind of talked about it before, is just like editing your different paragraphs, right? So if I clicked in and I wanted to maybe say projected amount to client and like add some more verbiage here and hit save, I can do that. I can make changes directly from here, which is always the most efficient. Instead of having to, download this as a Word doc on my PC and then make edits. It'll save you a lot of time if you just adopt to making your changes in here. And you can make a lot of changes. If you needed to add maybe another paragraph in here, you can come in, you can type additional verbiage, you can add all that in. And you saw how easy that was. I just kind of clicked here and I can add a section after. I can typically, if I wanted to, I can also drop down a few lines and keep typing. So it's a really powerful tool. It's also nice because when you download it to your PC, you obviously have that one version. If somebody comes in after you and downloads it, they're going to have a different version. So by making your edits in here, you're keeping that version history current, and you never have to worry about, oh, am I working off the most current document? So that would definitely be a use case for considering that versus just downloading it to your PC. Something else that is pretty cool about the collection section tables is that you're actually able to click into here and edit data. So if we wanted to, I can go in here, I can reselect meds. This is great if maybe you generated this settlement calculator and then later down the line, there was like an additional medical provider that popped up, or there was an additional expense. You can actually come in here and you can reselect it. Obviously, we don't have a new one added in here. Let's just add in another one for fun so we can actually see what it looks like in real time. Let's see what we got. Love that we have a test hospital. And then let's just say this is $5,000. That sounds good. And no reductions. So we'll go ahead and create that. So now I have 3 different medicals. And if I go back to my settlement section and I open up this document that I'm working on, and I can go over to my document. I can also do this from the overview. Doesn't matter. It's the same table. So wherever you want to handle this from, I can now go over here to reselect meds. And you can see I have my new test hospital in there and it's pulling that in. So I can reselect that. And you noticed I did this in real time. I didn't hit refresh. I didn't have to do anything else. It will just pull in any collection section items that you have there. And then you can make a selection, a manual selection of which ones you actually want to pull in. On that same note, you can also edit your different line items. So if I come into here and I added that and I was like, oh shoot, I actually meant to put this in as 6,000. Um, I have a really cool option available to me at this point. You can see kind of that there is a little purple kind of symbol behind here. And it means that I edited this value and I can now sync it back to Filevine. So if I wanted to, because in my mind, I'm like, oh, I just put this in. I know that this is supposed to be $6,000. I fat fingered it. I put in 5. I can actually come in here and sync this back to Filevine. And instead of having to go into my meds later and update that test hospital, it's automatically going to update for me. So that's a pretty cool feature. It doesn't always work with all fields. So it is working with original balance because this is a fill-in field. So it is a text box, if you will, for currency. Oh, that was a little bit weird. But it wouldn't work for something like this, the final balance due, because this is a formula. So you can't update a formula, right, and just overwrite it. You would have to come in here and like make a manual change and maybe say, oh, the reduction was actually like, only $600 or something like that. And then this would update. So that is something to note. You also can't go into your settlements. Let's go ahead and save that just for our little settlement sheet. You also can't create a new collection section item from here. So if I came in and I said, okay, I want to add a new row and I want to type in like, test, and this is, going to be $2,000 and all that, it's not going to push this back to Filevine. So you can see that this is grayed out. It'll actually say like rows cannot be synced to Filevine just because it doesn't work that way. It would be really cool if one day it was like a two-way sync where you can enter information here in the settlement sheet and it's going to push it back into meds. But for right now, you do have to physically create a collection section item or card in the medical section, and then we just reference that data. Because that's essentially what's happening, right? We're just referencing data that already exists in Filevine. We're not creating new data. So hopefully one day that will be our reality. That would be super cool. But for right now, if you do have to create, and you left off a medical provider, I would just say best case scenario, you come in here to your medicals and you actually input that data, and then you can just pull it in. Cool. Awesome. I can also just show you guys while we're here. Later down the line, maybe once this settles, you can go in and instead of regenerating a whole new document, right, you can just come in here and say, all right, this already settled, and it's going to start pulling in your settlement information from back here. So we previously, on another step, we had filled in our settlement information. And so now that I've said already settled, it's basically giving the document the green light to start pulling this in. So I'm pulling in, I have my liability, it's $100,000. We're pulling in the fee percentage. If I'm like, oh, I don't really like that fee percentage, you can update it here. Or, that is the fee percentage that is pulling in here. So if you wanted to, you could, of course, just update it in Filevine. That's always, a good thing just so that you have a source of truth of Filevine and there's no confusion when you edit this document that to be maybe 33 and a third. And so there's kind of a discrepancy, between the settlement section and the settlement calculator. So just be cautious of that if you do start updating just everything here. But then the other option is you'll have an option to select itemized settlement. So if we select itemized, it's essentially going to show me, if I come over to the document, it's going to say, hey, we got a liability settlement for $100,000. Of course, this is only in this scenario, we only have one settlement. But you can imagine if you have two settlements, right? Maybe you have a UIM settlement. It would also say under here, and it would give your client a breakdown of how much they got for the liability settlement and the UIM settlement. So that part is pretty cool. You can also do lump sum if you just want to see that. And then we also have the option, I know some firms don't always share the itemized expenses on the final settlement sheet. So you have an option here if you want to show those or if you don't want to show those and you just want to show a lump sum. Obviously, right now we don't have any expenses, but you would obviously. But otherwise, this would be what the lump sum would look like, right? It's going to say settlement amount and it's just going to say $100,000, and then you'll have the same breakdown. Previously, you would also notice that it said settlement calculator up here. Now that we've settled, it actually says distribution statement because this is our final settlement. You can customize this language. You can say final settlement. You can say partial settlement if you're paying out one settlement before the other. This is fully customizable, as is this whole template, right? This is just a really jumping off point for a lot of our clients. And you can see that this information is pulling in. And then we have our sign off down here, which can be customized as well. But then, this is the final settlement. This is what you would send to your clients. So you would just need to get their signature and date and all that fun stuff. And we would recommend still sending this through VineSign just to make it easy for you. So if you're prepping to send it through VineSign, some of the new functionality that was released is that you can now save this as a Word doc to your document section. So previously, you would have to download this, re-upload it to your doc section. Now we can just come in here. I can save as a Word doc or PDF. Let's just go ahead and save as a PDF. We should see a bar up here. This should pop up. It's going to start saving for us. Something also to note is you'll notice there's not a save button here. This will automatically save as you're going through the document, so you don't have to worry about that. So I can close out of this. I know my changes have saved, and now I can go into my document section here. And you'll notice here's that .vine that I generated previously. That's the document, and I can currently open it from here if I wanted to make more changes. But that is where this document lives. And then we do have the PDF that we downloaded, which is right here. And this one will also, once you download it as a Word doc or PDF, it does remove the overview. This just doesn't want to load for me, I guess. But it will load. And the nice part is like the overview where you answered all these questions, got all this great data. This part's going to fall off. It's not actually going to be part of your document. So you don't have to worry of like, oh, what do I do? Do I have to download this and then delete this page out? Nope, it's just going to automatically remove it. If I could show you, all right, come on, you got it. I was like, I have internet. All right, that's going to be painfully slow. But so yeah, you can download that directly to your documents, and then you can just have it there. You can always then move this, into another folder, or if you wanted to, we can come over here and we can send this through VineSign and get that signature of your client signing off and saying that they approve the settlement. What else? Wow, it's doing its thing. The other thing too, you can obviously send documents if you needed to. So via text or other things, you would be able to kind of attach a document if you wanted to. So I can come into here just under attachment. If it will load, there we go. And you can see I can send either this finalized document that I prepared as a PDF, or I can send that .vine that I've been working on. So it's really up to you how you want to send this. Probably the client would prefer a PDF versus a .vine, but otherwise, if you're sending this to a colleague or an attorney or somebody else, you could send them the .vine so that they can actually play around with the numbers and things like that. There we go. This came out. This is what it would look like. It's a PDF. Awesome. I don't see too much in the chat. We just had those couple of questions. That was a whole spiel. If anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But FVDA is a great tool for a lot of things, right? It kind of replaces the need for report fusions. So you can go in and you can generate documents. Like I said, there is a mass docgen similar option. You do have to be a little bit more comfortable with the back end of Outlaw here. Which is where you edit your templates and create templates. And you can generate batch operations where you can mass generate documents that push into Filevine. And they will go into their respective cases. You just need a project ID. Otherwise, you can also do what's called a legacy migration. This is more for our Outlaw specific clients, and that means that they're not connected to Filevine. They might just be connected to Salesforce or another entity or nothing altogether, and they're just generating contracts. And you can actually mass upload old documents or contracts that you have and have them live in your contract repository here. And then you can keep track of them instead of having documents in multiple places. So that's kind of the back end portion of it. But for our FVDA clients, which most of you guys are, you won't really be spending much time in here just because you'll be working out of Filevine and generating your documents that way.
Yeah. For those of you that are maybe just getting started in Outlaw, again, just some things to remember. Get everybody that's in Filevine added into Outlaw so that they can generate. You'll also have the option to upload a logo and letterhead. which under the details you can see, you can add your address in. You have the option to have those show on your documents or not. And that's at a template level. So you'll choose if you want the template to have it or not. And then you can also add themes. So this is a great way for you all to be able to say, hey, this specific document or these specific documents need to look a certain way. They need to have a certain font. The headings need to be a certain color or a certain font. You can create those themes and then apply them to a full document so that you're not having to change each individual section as well. And then just as a reminder, when you're in Outlaw, there's currently no undo button. So whatever you do can't be undone. So just be very cautious as you all are creating templates, editing templates, anything like that. Again, these are your base templates. These are what folks are generating in Filevine. So if you remove something when they go to generate it in Filevine, it will be gone and can't be recovered.
Perfect. And yeah, I just answered another question. There was one in the chat that said, in your template, were you able to adjust reductions for the medicals and liens for each individual line item? And the answer is yes. You typically do that directly from Filevine. So if you click into your meds section or your liens, whichever one, typically you will see a reduction section. You should see that, maybe not in your system. If not, we're here to help. We can definitely build that out. And you can either do it as a currency, which we have here. Some folks also like it as a percentage. So you would calculate that here, have that information, and then we could always pull in this reduction total into that collection section table. So as its own column, so that you can show your client, hey, the original balance was this much. We got you this reduction. Here's the final balance due. And then I think there's another question too. Can you walk through again how we can find the specific template to start editing it? So if you have an FVDA team, you will likely need to sign in actually to a different URL. Most of you guys will be on this URL. This is the fv.getoutlaw.com. If you're like, I'm not sure which URL I'm on because there's technically 3, you can always come into your Filevine here, go to the setup menu, and then go to orgs, and it will tell you where your Outlaw team is connected. So ours is on a different shard, which makes it very confusing for this demo. But we are located on this URL. But if you are a FVDA or a Filevine client, you will be located at this fv.getoutlaw one. So that's the first thing. Find your URL. Click on your URL and essentially get signed in. So make sure you sign in. Sometimes when you're signing in, you will have different options. So you might have signed in with single sign-on, which is where you use the same email and password that is tied to your main email. And so you can sign in with Google or Microsoft, or you might have set up a unique password to sign in. So that's the first thing. Just get signed in there. And let's see, I'm using single sign-on. So I would just use my email to sign in, and then it's going to recognize me here. And then to physically edit your templates, you would want to come in. You would want to come into the template section right over here on the left. It's going to look like a stack of papers. And then you would just want to find the specific template that you want to edit. So if I wanted to come down here and edit this one, this is the template we've been working on today. I can just find that and hit the 3 dots to the right and hit edit template. And then I can go in and I can start coding out or, creating new verbiage in here.
And once you all have created templates, you'll want to make sure that you activate them so that they can actually be generated in Filevine. If you don't activate them, you're not going to be able to search them, generate them, anything like that. We obviously have a ton of templates in our sandboxes and things like that. So some of them are not active. If you don't want folks to be able to maybe generate a document because you're editing it, you can deactivate it so that you can make whatever changes and then reactivate it so folks can be able to generate it.
And
Um,
I think the other question on there was, will we have all those templates? These are our templates. If you would like to get the settlement calculator set up, please reach out to us. This is just a snapshot of a few of the various templates that we've built out. But if you also have a custom template that you would like to see and use as the settlement calculator, feel free to reach out to us after the call and we can definitely get that set up.
Yeah, all the templates that are in here are stuff that we've created or uploaded. If you have templates like that are Word documents, you could upload those and use those as a starting point. But typically, anytime you come into Outlaw, you have a like blank slate. There's a like test or demo document that Filevine uploads for everybody, but that's the extent of the documents until you or somebody like us goes in to create those for you.
Perfect.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Jordan. You're always a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate it. If you all have any questions or need anything, I put both mine and Jordan's email in the chat. It's our first names and then at vineskills.com. Feel free to reach out. Again, we can get you connected to an optimizer to help with whatever your needs are. If they're not FVDA related and they're Filevine related or lead docket, Domo, whatever you all need, we're here to help. This recording again will be on our website. Feel free to peruse around our website. We have tons of great videos on there, tons of great resources. We'd love to be part of your team, so reach out so that we can assist and help in any way possible. We hope to see you in a future free help session. And again, Jordan, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jasmine. Bye, everyone.